Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wizard Factory live show. Today is June 10th, 2023, and we are live on YouTube, Facebook, and the One Great Work Network. Today, we're talking about how to fix the world in 2 steps. Not 2 easy steps, like an infomercial might say, but 2 steps nonetheless. So, we're going to get into that. Of course, we've got a post of the week to get into. We've got Rodney joining us for the astrological weather report and some under the macroscope news segment to cover as well. So big show, good stuff to get into, and hopefully, if there's any takers, we'll get into taking some calls at the end. So, welcome to the Wizard Factory. This channel is all about giving you the tools and mindsets to live a more free and empowered life. If you're new here, welcome to our growing community for those seeking self-empowerment, spiritual evolution, and a tribal family. If this sounds good to you, please remember the tribe and subscribe down below. And if you do so, make sure you click that bell. Don't even bother subscribing unless you click the bell, because these algorithms are bullshit, and you may never see another post again. So you'll get notified whenever I go live, as well as dropping new videos. I've got some good stuff in the pipeline, getting ready to be scheduled out, as I'm going to be going on the road soon. I'll cover more on that once I get into the announcements section. So let's get it going, guys. All right. My name is Logan Hart. If you are here and you can hear me, make some noise in the chat. Wake up the algorithm, get this show, get this video pushed out among these platforms. Theo, welcome, sir. Great to see you as always. That's right. Hello, Sarah. Lovely to see you. That's right, guys. You know what to do with the like button.
Smash, smash, smash. Yeah.
All right, so big show today. Let's go ahead and jump into some news. All right. Now, I'm going to cover this, and I do recommend trying to kind of read along because I'm going to be kind of avoiding certain words to keep from getting my channel unnecessarily flagged, shadow banned, suppressed more than it already is. So, headline: people who get more these thingies everybody loves so much, more likely to get the V, new study shows. So the more doses of this fun time stuff a person receives, the higher risk of getting the V, according to a peer-reviewed study by the Cleveland Clinic. The findings could not be disregarded as anti, because the researchers were not setting out to disprove the effectiveness. They were generally just doing some science, and this was the findings. So, I mean, really, this isn't anything any of you guys already know, but it's just when you've been gaslit for years, it's nice to get some validation, even from the people that were shoving it down our throats, right? So, moreover, the higher rate of infections among those who received multiple could not be rationalized by the notion that the individuals who received more were elderly, because many of the study participants were relatively young. The average age was 42. The researchers suggested that natural immunity likely played a role in providing protection against infection amongst those with fewer fun time juice. I just keep thinking how the places. Oh, this is some commentary. I just keep thinking how the places in our society that are still trying to take this decision away from individuals, like university campuses, of course, where the bivalent is going to be required still in the fall, like how naive and unscientific it is to take that decision out of people and their doctors. He also criticized the attempts to suppress criticism of these, calling it all misinfo that has occurred online and elsewhere for the last 3 years. The official U.S. public health approach to that stuff has that everyone should get does not make sense because, according to the study's findings, repeated does not correlate with greater protection among young people. If you're a healthy young person, really all you're doing by getting your fifth or something, whatever, is making it slightly more likely you're going to get the thing that you're supposed to be protecting yourself from. Moreover, if you look at what areas of society have requirements for this, he said it's mostly school-aged populations. Really think about that. They're supposed to be more susceptible in older age, yet it's the youth that are more targeted. Americans are likely to feel justifiably outraged when they read the study, adding, people are going to feel, I think, so gaslit about all this stuff. Well, that's exactly what it is. Great to see this being exposed. Yeah, I mean, again, this is not anything all of us probably have already, we knew this from the start, but it's still a sight to see when this is really getting exposed and kind of validated from the more official side of things, right? The experts, as they love to refer them to. So, really quick news segment there. So let's get into some quick announcements and into some fun astrology with Rodney. So let's see. I need to share the video right quick. Bear with me. Do follow us on social media. The Wizard Factory on Facebook, Instagram, as well as the One Great Work Network. For those unfamiliar, this is a platform put together by Mark Passio. I'm live there right now. But there are, 70 plus content creators now featured on this platform, each bringing their own unique voice and vision to teaching the principles of natural law and truth and morality and freedom, all the things that are good, to quote old Greg there. So, definitely check this out. See, some of the other content creators, support them. This is really a great platform. So again, do follow us on social media. We'll play a quick short on that. And if you haven't yet, do check out the free initiation package. It's a free download. I'm going to play a video about that right quick. Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I just want to take a quick moment to offer you a special gift. It's the free initiation package download. This is a free download package that includes the Toolbox mini course. I created this package to equip you with all of the essential tools you need for any type of energetic or magical practice for anyone serious about their spiritual development. It's comprised of 3 parts: the circle, the breath, and the voice, where you'll learn how to cast the circle of the Magi, various breathwork techniques, including a powerful guided breathwork meditation, Runegaller, and more. You'll also get access to the Inner Sanctum, our private Facebook group and Discord server, as well as some Wizard Factory wallpapers for desktop and mobile, all for free. And for those who've already seen this course, I'm happy to announce that this is a brand new remake with better production and even more information. You can find the link to get yours in the description below. So check it out and let's get back to the content. Sweet. So there it is. Do check that out. It is completely free, and the link is down below in the description box or on the link tree, as well as all the links to the social media platforms as well. So definitely just go, a couple clicks, go give us a follow. I'm pretty active there, posting reels, memes, daily thoughts, and things like that. So essentially, yeah, do check that out. One last thing. If you go to my YouTube channel, first of all, if you're watching on Facebook, that's wonderful. But I do recommend following on YouTube, as this is pretty much like my main focus for the platform. That's where I want to have the most concentrated viewership, engagement, all that stuff. And if you scroll down, this is what I recommend: is finding. There it is. This playlist right here, Laying the Foundation, Essential Videos. And this is, if you're new here especially, and you really want to come to understand what are the fundamental aspects of what I'm trying to put forth here on this channel, this is going to be where you want to start. So watch them in order, and they really just lay the foundation, just like the title suggests, and that's going to kind of give you an initiation into those fundamental concepts. In fact, this episode today is probably going to be going in there because it's really some vital stuff that we're going to be covering today. So anyway, that's it for the announcements. Just a quick update on my personal situation. Those been following know I'm getting ready to go back over the road as a truck driver. I got a new job that'll be starting here soon, but I did get an extension on my prep time. Essentially, I just had so much stuff to do before leaving. I mean, getting the truck, getting new equipment for continuing the live show over the road, which I'll be doing. But it was just so much stuff, not to mention I'm trying to finish my presentation for Funnel, which is coming along, but just the crunch of all of that and would have been leaving next Friday or next Saturday was just too much. So I did get an extension. What that means for you guys is there's going to be a few more shows coming up until I do actually leave, and we'll have to take a short break until I kind of get rolling and get everything figured out, and then I'm able to start putting out these shows again. As I said, I will have some content scheduled in the meantime. So once I go on the road, I will have some new podcast episodes and things like that to kind of keep you all satisfied until I get the show rolling again. Angela, great to see you. Welcome. Rana, Jason, a lot of good familiar faces and a couple new ones. Welcome to the show. So glad you're here. Thanks for joining us. So that's, pretty much what I wanted to share. Like I said, I was expecting to be leaving next week, but I pushed that out. So I won't be leaving until the second week of July. So at least 2, 3, maybe 4 more shows, probably about 3 until there will be a break coming up. So, there you go. All right. I think that covers it for the announcements. So I guess without further ado, let's get into some good astrological weather. Rodney Goodwin, welcome,
Hey, man.
sir. Always a pleasure. How you doing today, man?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing great.
Awesome.
What you got for us today?
Yeah, well, it's been a really powerful couple weeks, man. We've been having of course, the South Node has been running in Scorpio, still T-squaring up with the nodes. The nodes are still T-squaring up with the Plutonian energy at 0 degrees Aquarius, and that's taking it back to the conjunction there that happened not only with Saturn and Jupiter, but also with Saturn and Pluto. So we're still dealing with that energy, and we're still dealing with the eclipse energy at 29 degrees with Aries. Um, that was real. That such a powerful energy that we're still feeling. It's still happening. In context to basically things getting uncomfortable. Having to make choices that are pushing us into out of our comfort zone. And challenging our belief systems, challenging the values in context to Jupiter and Taurus, and then bringing us into a place where we are almost like, it's kind of like like a boil coming up in your skin, and then finally it just pops and opens up, and all the pus and crap comes out. So you've got to heal it, and that's what's happening. We're in a place where we have to, basically Pluto's basically taking a wrecking ball and basically wrecking our comfort zones at this point. So with the South Node staying in, at these last 2 degrees in Scorpio, a lot of hidden stuff is coming up and out. You'll see it in the news. You're going to see it coming up. Things are going to get exposed. Things are going to come out into the open, and people are going to like, oh my God, I didn't know that was going on. And the same thing with your own individual life. There may be things coming up in your individual life in context where, you'll be like, oh, wow, I never saw that before. I didn't realize I had that behavior, or I was on that loop, or, I still had that toxic, connection with some of my family or some relationships. And all that's going to come up and be exposed, until about mid-July, when the nodes then move into Aries. This T square with Pluto is going to be continuing on. So it will definitely reveal or apocalypto or unveil certain things in your life that you need to actually look in the mirror and change. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is that, we if you have a lot of fixed energy in your chart, sometimes you can be stubborn about that change. So what we have to do is we have to honestly take a look at it in context to transformation, because what doesn't get transformed, what doesn't bring you into that transformation and you get stubborn about, guess what? You're going to be dragged through the underworld in context to Plutonian energy that will be transformed at some point, and so you might as well just get on board and get it done. Excuse me. Get it done and get the process rolling in context of transmutation and transformation to your belief systems, your values, what you thought, you were in your belief systems was going on. A lot of this shit's just going to be shattered, because it isn't about your truth or my truth or his truth or her truth. It is about what? The compass, the moral compass of actually moving towards truth itself.
The truth.
Exactly. And that is where things have to go in context to this. Because why? Because truth is not subjective to anything. It is just, it has no master. It is just truth. It is the cosmic principles that we must apply into our lives and bring into manifestation in context to our own life, our own path and our soul expression, and then basically unweaving those karmic ignorance aspects in our lives that have been going on. And this is where the illumination takes place in context to this transit with Pluto squaring off the nodes. Very powerful, man. But today I want to get into the summer solstice.
Okay.
So I'm going to pull up a chart here. Let's see, share screen. Boom. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So this is the summer solstice chart, basically June 21st. And what we have here is, you see the sun sitting here at 0 degrees. Okay, so anything, basically the Western or the tropical system is based upon the solstice and the equinox. And those are those are cardinal points. So Cancer, Capricorn, Libra, Aries. These are called cardinal points, okay? Or what we call a grand cross of cardinal energy. what is cardinal energy? Cardinal energy is very initiatory, and it works on a public level, a collective level. So if you have areas in your chart, ascendant, your pillars, wherever, planetary aspects in your chart in context, right? What's going to happen is those are areas in your life that are cardinal, that work in initiatory aspects, not only to yourself within, but as without, to the actual collective. So I happen to have, my ascendant and descendant on the 1-7 axis, which is basically Aries Libra. So Libra ascendant, Aries descendant. And then I happen to have my MC and IC line. My MC is in Capricorn, Cancer, and my IC is in Capricorn. So those are all cardinal points. So I actually have almost like a grand cross with my cardinal points to these magnetic points, basically is what the ascendant and descendant are. And then the IC and the MC being also magnetic points to the 10th gate and 4th gate. So I have an influence to be able to affect the collective that way because of those magnetic points that I carry in my templating. Now, this is something that you can look at in your chart to realize that where you can have an impact. And then if you look at the house back behind it, you can see where that impact is going to be taking place. So, of course, your descendant is your first house, and your descendant is your 7th house. So, and then same thing with the top and the bottom, which is your MC and your IC line. The MC runs to the 10th gate or Capricorn, and then the IC runs to the 4th gate of Cancer. So you can kind of look and see where those placings are in context, and then you can wield things to your sun, your moon, your Saturn, your Jupiter, on and on and on, and kind of get a tapestry of how you're not only going to work with vibrational correspondence, but what type of impact, in context to your mission here, or what you're doing here, that you could have on the collective consciousness. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So what's happening here now? We've got the summer solstice. This is basically the sun is trekked towards the northern hemisphere now, as far as it can go. And it's going to stay there for, basically it's just going to be there for a few days, and then it's going to start its trek back. So we have the longest day of the year here, June 21st. And that is basically a 0 degree Cancer position. So what we have here is something very interesting. Now, I've been diving into what's called dwarf planets. So these are basically very long transitory planets. The particular one that is conjunct here with the sun at 0 degrees in Cancer is a planetary dwarf planet called Chaos. So Chaos, the mythos behind it is that Chaos represents the time when heaven was ripped from the earth. And from that, we were left with what? Basically dropping us into the abyss. A rift was opened, so to speak. And heaven was ripped from earth, from our consciousness. And literally there was this abyss where it opened up like a wormhole to this whole demonic aspect. And so it's about really looking at things and seeing the duality aspect, and then really working with your shadow to bring things back into that higher consciousness. That's what this point represents. So when you're looking at a solstice or an equinox, you're basically hitting the tuning fork for the next 3 months. Now, to see where this energy is actually being placed in context to the wheel and the snapshot, where do we have this Cancer energy? What's running that gate? It's moon, right? So the moon runs the Cancer gate in context to its aspect, right? So where is moon being placed? Moon is going to be in Leo. What is Leo energy? Has everything to do with heart-based, the heart-based intelligence, because Leo's correspondence is the sun. So when you look at how this is connecting, what's happening here? You've got basically this initiatory aspect to bring things from the abyss, right? And this chaos, this entropy, the stagnation, this place where we've been fighting our demons, so to speak, and come into a place where our focus goes to from the abyss to the zero to Ganunda Gap. Now, if you don't know what Ganunda Gap is, I believe Ganunda Gap is the womb of creation. Is that right, Logan?
Essentially, yeah. It's like the just the primordial womb,
Right, exactly.
cosmically.
Right. So it's the place where we come back
It's like
to
infinite potentiality, basically.
right. So it's an eternal perspective in context to the womb or the zero. So when we come back to that zero, which is interesting because the sun is at 0 degrees, right? The planet Chaos is at 0 degrees, and then we have the moon and Venus conjunct sitting here,
That's interesting.
which is all about love, man.
The 0 degrees. That's the egg, the cosmic egg.
It
0.
is exactly. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at bringing that focus of our consciousness back to our heart core intelligence and connecting that within Ganunda Gap to pull that cosmic energy back into ourselves and bring our soul shards from past timelines into this present moment. The next 3 months, this is going to be our focus to really reintegrate your life into a higher dimension, a higher consciousness, a higher initiatory aspect in context to where the moon and Venus is being conjunct to this aspect. Isn't that beautiful?
Absolutely.
And so that's what's happening here with this solstice. This is the snapshot or the kind of the blueprint for the next 3 months. When taking it into basically into Libra, then when we hit the equinox. So when we're dealing with that, we're also dealing with what? A retrograde with Saturn. So Saturn is in retrograde now in Pisces. So this is all about really diving in on an internal aspect to where your mind or your mental health is at this moment. And then being able to hone that into a higher aspect, a higher space. Saturn's going to be basically forging your mental capabilities and your mental aspect in context to what? Pisces, which is the big picture. It's dissolving the boundaries of our narcissistic tendencies.
Nice.
So that's what's going on with this particular transit with the retrograde with Pisces and Saturn. And so during this period of time, all the way, I think it's retrograde till October, mid October. During this time, we're going to be able to really facilitate not only, basically bringing ourselves into, our connection with the higher force, with bringing ourselves into that womb perspective, pulling things out of that abyss and that that chaos, bringing and reconnecting our consciousness to a higher aspect, and then taking a look in the mirror on an internal dialogue to the Saturnian energy retrograde to actually where our mental health needs to level up, where our mind needs to come into alignment with truth. And then dissolving those boundaries, because Pisces is all about dissolving the boundaries and bringing in the big picture. Whereas, what's Saturn? Saturn's all about drawing boundaries. See? And so Saturn's going to show you where those boundaries or where those aspects are to your narcissistic tendencies that you haven't been willing to look at or dissolve.
I have a question. So we hear a lot about retrogrades, especially the poster child Mercury retrograde or Gatorade or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And just I think it would be useful to clarify into this concept for the audience as well as myself. To me, the retrograde is like the inverse of those characteristics, but that doesn't necessarily mean the opposite. In other words, it still is what it is. Can you explain that nuance between how it amplifies like the negative characteristics while still kind of being what it is? Like, how would you explain that and just the retrograde concept in general?
So basically, a retrograde is that the planets have slowed their movement. So it looks like they're moving backwards. They're really not moving backwards.
Uh,
But what's happened here is that they've slowed their movement. So planets that are direct are moving faster than planets that are in these what we call shadow periods. Okay, so Mercury retrograde is a shadow aspect, Saturn, on and on and on, right? So when we're dealing with a retrograde, what are we looking at? We're looking at taking that energy, and this is why you got to know your transits, because what house is transiting the retrograde? This is where you need to work on. See, like basically this particular Saturn retrograde is transiting my fifth house, so it has everything to do with my sun, and my and the heart. And so when that happens, you've got to take a look at where the shadow aspects are going to come forth in your internal dialogue and how you're working with that in context to your Gemini energy. When you're dealing with what you're dealing with the duality aspect, or the pendulum swing where you're getting still pulled. So it brings up your shadow in context, but this is where you're able to actually get it unveiled, where you can see things that you haven't seen before.
so are you saying that the retrograde doesn't necessarily change the qualities of the planet, but more it highlights the shadow aspects within yourself regarding that?
Right, because we are the planets, we are the stars,
Right.
we're all of this, it's all within us.
Okay. So
Yeah.
so can you explain then how this applies when we're talking about Saturn, which is now going retrograde? Like, what is that? What are the direct effects of that retrograde specifically to Saturn?
Because it shows you where your limitations are with that gate and with the house that's transiting, you're being transited. It shows you where you still need to fucking heal and be fortunate. It shows you where your karmic aspects are riding,
Mm.
and where they're weighing you down in context to your ignorance and not understanding who you are, right? And so these are all karmic things that get to be exposed, so you can unweave them. And if you want to take it to the mythos in context to the Norns, your past, your present, and your future. See? And so, what's still pulling you into your past in context to your karmic ignorance,
Mm.
where you're still on the loops and you haven't resolved into your dharma, into your purpose? See? Which, when we take that to our south node, then we can see, where that purpose is lying in context.
Right,
And
because
yeah,
Saturn is all about natural law, so
right,
it's gonna
exactly.
expose those lessons that you're not seeing and being like, "Hey,
Yes.
look, this is what you're creating through your ignorance, through your shadow, and that karmic, uh, tie-in to your actions being kind of retroactively projected forward in what you're
Right,
creating."
right, and with the Pluto basically T squaring the nodes, it's like an unveiling of, or from the underworld, because it's working with this energy as well, and it's like an unveiling that happens, and then like you could just be laying in your bed at night getting ready to go to sleep, and all of a sudden, boom, the unveiling takes place, and you realize where you've been basically harboring shame and guilt your whole life, and then where it was connected to. And then you can take that all the way back and go and forgive yourself and step into a place where you're like empowering yourself now and realizing that that's not who you are. You're not that shame. You're not that guilt. You're not that person. And so when it comes and it unveils and you actually get a chance to look at the mirror gate in context, then that's where Saturn then helps you do the work. You actually are linking up with that Saturnian energy and allowing it to forge you. See, with
Mm.
the retrograde. So Saturn becomes a very internal aspect on the retrograde process. And when it's in Pisces, what's it doing? It's dissolving the boundaries of that shadow aspect so that it can be integrated, so you can transmute it and transform it in context to the Plutonian energy.
Here's an interesting comment I want to touch on, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts, Rodney. But he's saying, I thought Satan was against natural law, meaning I'm assuming he's correlating where Saturn is a derivative etymologically, Saturn, Satan. I personally, this is my take, is that's kind of a Christianized projection that Saturn isn't necessarily malefic, and it doesn't mean Satan. If anything, Venus is more, right,
Yes.
the morning star and all this kind of
That's
stuff.
the dark Luciferian stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
See, Saturn is being used energetically to put the cube around the planet, right? The tesseract to trap
Yes.
us into mind control.
That's
But
right.
that doesn't mean Saturn is bad. It means, see, these energies are all about balance. Everything regarding ourselves, our psychology, and the stars and the planets, right? Astrologically speaking, as above, so below. There is no bad planets. There is no bad like aspects of yourself. The ego is not a bad thing. It's
Right.
all about balance. This is
Yeah.
how, and so like they're not using something like inherently evil against you. What they're doing is they're pushing the polarities into states of imbalance, which are conducive to the mind control. They push you into the left brain mentality. That doesn't mean logic and critical thinking and all
Yeah.
this left brain activity is a bad thing. It's just too much of anything is a bad thing. Too much water, too many vitamins and nutrients are a
Right.
bad thing. It's all about balance. That's how the universe actually works. So that's my take, is that, I don't see Saturn as Satan, or that it's inherently bad. And because, yeah, the judges wear black robes and they worship the cube in religion and all this kind of stuff. Like, Saturn is actually your greatest teacher, because it's your karmic, creation of what you're putting out, and the way that you're essentially interacting through your choices and behaviors with natural law, and then what's that giving back to you. So why are we enslaved? Because that's what we are choosing. We are going along with evil. We're allowing this to be happening. It's all about manufacturing consent and all this kind of stuff. Like, if we rose above, that's actually partly what I'm going to be getting into in the topic today. So it's interesting, this parallel. But Saturn is not a bad thing. It's like tough love. That's kind of how I think of it. It's harsh, it's difficult, it's challenging, but it's doing that for you, not to you. What's your take on that,
Yeah,
Ryan?
yeah. Saturn doesn't care about your feelings, man. It's not going to give a shit about how you feel or any of that shit. It's going to forge you in the fires, right? It's not about what's the word I want to use? It's not about Saturn being a malefic. Look, it's been thrown on the inversions and the reversals in context to cosmic principle. And so what's happened is that, you're talking about cube technology. The Saturn moon matrix is that cube technology in context to the tesseract and the lockdown. And they use that from the sixth dimension to lock everything down in context to what? Balance and harmony to the seventh gate. See? And so you can't reach that balance if you're on the inversions or what we call the black sun consciousness, in context to the Saturnian worship that goes on to the Abrahamic construct. This is actually what they do. I mean, if you look at some of these things that are in the Vatican, that are in these spaces, to all this lockdown, it's Saturnian worship in context to the black sun. And this is what we're dealing with the darkness, with the darkened heart, with the eclipsed heart of the moon eclipsing your sun, and then taking it to the inversions of cosmic principle, which is basically ignorance. See? And so the ignorance is what's been running your system, because you haven't had an illumination in context to truth. And how you integrate that truth into your life and then change your timeline trajectory in context to your path work. And that's where then you start working. You have to work with Saturn. You can't bypass that. So Saturn becomes your friend, your companion, your spark plug in context to what? Forging you into a better human being, a better man, a better woman, a better mage, a better mystic, a powerful shaman, and dealing with bringing your gifts online after you've learned the lessons and you have what? Dissolved your karmic attributes in context to your ignorance.
Very well said.
Yeah, that's how you work with Saturn. I have a Capricorn South Node, man. I know. I mean, it's been forging me my whole life,
Right.
So I've had to heal that South Node to go to my North Node, which is what Cancer, which is where my
Mhm.
Moon energy is in Pisces, being the shaman, and understanding that that's what's forging me in the fires,
Right.
you know.
Elliot, I see you said you're joking, which that is funny, but like just to expand on this a little bit, it's no more evil than like the weights in a gym. Think of it like that. It's like, well, but the weights are heavy and they're hard, and what do they call that? Resistance training. Saturn is your resistance
Yes,
training.
yes,
It's the going to be the catalyst to you rising up,
yes,
to
yes.
becoming stronger, more empowered. That's that's how you want to look at that, is like not as a victim, but seeing it as an asset actually, and learning to lean into that and harness and leverage that to your advantage basically.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, a lot of people use the Devil card in the tarot as an example to,
Mm,
Capricorn.
interesting.
And what's sitting at the Devil card? You have the Baphomet,
The
and
goat.
on the throne with the goat, right? And then
Yes.
the male and the female are chained to it. See, so they're
Hmm.
chained, right? They're chained to the what? To the inversions
See, you
in
could look at
context.
this.
See,
Yeah, you could look at this even from the worldview perspective of human slavery that
that's
exists
exactly what
condition.
it is.
In fact, I would say many of these dark occultists actually see it that way. They actually believe they're doing this for us, because it's like the more they enslave us, the more it's showing us the importance of freedom, right? This
Yeah,
is like the pagan mindset as opposed to everything black and white through the Abrahamic. The pagan sees everything, they see it's all balance because
yeah,
nature is
right,
balanced. There is
right.
no just black and white. It's all part of the same system, and they're integral parts. If you took away Saturn, if you took away the resistance,
Yes,
like nothing would have any meaning. There would be no journey because you're not moving towards anything, right? You need that force that's pulling you back to make you want to push forward as a counterbalance, as a reaction to moving yourself towards evolution. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. Because if you're not challenged, right, by your own ignorance, right? And Saturn's not challenging that, and the karmic retribution is not hitting you in the face and knocking your ass, saying, "Hey, man, get it fucking together," right? And you're
Yeah,
not getting that boomerang back, right? You're not, bam, hey, wake the fuck up.
right.
See,
Like
yeah,
if you're a single mom and you're trapped with this narcissistic tyrant,
exactly,
it's like that is a bad situation objectively. So I'm not diminishing that is a negative thing or that you haven't been victimized. But what is that more than anything? From a useful and practical perspective, it's a fucking wake up call.
it is,
It's a time for you to look at yourself in the mirror and
it
say,
is,
how did I get here? What
yeah,
is it about me that allowed this to happen? How
exactly,
can I become stronger and get out of it, and more importantly, not let it happen again? Take the lessons learned from that manifestation of slavery, and say, like, what parts of me brought that about, and how can I change those from the inside, so that I have a different external experience in the future, because it's
right.
all correspondence.
Right, because if your ignorance of the law of vibration, and the law of correspondence, and the
The
cause and
law of
effect,
freedom.
exactly, and cause and effect, context to your choices and what you're actually putting into action, that's all coming back on you in karmic retribution. And this is also another inversion of the Saturnian energies, government, in context to what the slavery aspect. When we're dealing with the actual inversion of Saturn, when we're looking at government constructs, see, and that is also part of this. And somebody said about its laws and contracts. Exactly. Yeah, because
Yep.
what do you put on your basically on your hand? A ring. It's the
Right.
ring of Saturn.
Exactly.
See, and so when you're dealing with contracts in the marital aspect or any type of contract, that is running through the Saturnian energy. And you've got to be able to understand, wait a second, I need to really look at this energy and see if this is something that I want to get myself entangled with. Is it actually in an inversion, or is it actually been flipped within myself first, and then to vibrational correspondence in context to what I'm pulling in? See?
Right, because what is natural law but a contract, a nonverbal,
Exactly.
actionary contract? Like you're signing contracts with every single choice you make, because that's binding. That's why when we talk about natural law, it's the the non-man-made, immutable, and binding laws of the universe that are tied to your choices, to your behaviors. And
Yes.
every time you make a choice, you're signing a contract saying, I accept whatever outcome is going to come back to me through this choice, whether it's positive or negative. You
Yes.
can have an intention and what you're going for, but what you're going to get is not necessarily what you want. It's what you did.
Yeah.
You
And
reap what you sow.
that's why you have a Saturn return, because what happens during that return, basically, the Earth has moved 30 rotations, Saturn's moved one. So you are basically having a Saturn return within your chart, which is bringing your life up for a review in context to where you need to make calibrations, recalibrate, see, to truth and to cosmic principle. And that is how it works. And so during this time, 29, 30 years old, this is when major things shift in your life. You may get married, you may have kids, you may move, you may have a geographic, move to a different job, a different career, whatever during that time, and so when you have these Saturn returns, that's all about going in and really looking at where you need to recalibrate your life to empower yourself to be a better human being. That so Saturn forges you in the challenge of that, and then teaching you perseverance to push through. That's climbing the mountain of Capricorn as the goat, the individual driving the narrative to getting to the top of that mountain and realizing that it's going to be a challenge to climb it. But the question is, do you have it inside to do it? Can you actually grab a hold of the horns of the goat and take the challenge to the top of that fucking mountain?
Boom. See? Awesome.
That's the Saturnian energy in context. See?
Cool.
Yeah. And so, it's really important, when you're dealing with, the lockdown in context to the inversions of Saturn, how they're using cosmic law and natural law against you.
Right.
Where are you still trapped in that tesseract in context to how things are being used against you?
Right. What are you responsible for?
And then what are you putting into action in context to that that's creating ignorance and karmic aspects in your life?
That's what I mean. It's like you are responsible for
Yeah.
yourself and what you're what you're putting forth into creation through your actions. That's what's being used against you, because it's never not yours.
Right. Exactly. So when you're looking at aspects in your chart where Saturn is trined or sextiled or opposing or squaring off or conjunct, then what's happening is you get to see the energy in context to how you're going to work with the Saturnian energy in your templating.
Right.
See? And so that's why I like the Western system. I mean, I like the Vedic system too. I like both systems, but I like the Western system because it is predicated upon the solstice and the equinox and the Grand Cross. And that's why I like it, because you get these 0 points, in context to the changing of the seasons. And it's actually, it's kind of really a beautiful archetype to work with when you're working with this cardinal energy, the 1-7 and 10-4 axis. So it's very powerful, man.
Awesome, brother. Well, quickly tell folks where they can find you, how to get a hold of you, and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Email is heartcoreproductions9@gmail.com. My link tree has everything on it. It's in the description below. Go to my Facebook page, Heartcore Productions. Rodney Goodwin on Messenger. My Facebook page, other Facebook page is Rodney Goodwin. YouTube is Heartcore Productions. And then your website is heartcoreproductions.com. So you can get a hold of me at any of those spaces.
Right. Hit him up for some consultations, some transit readings, get into
Yeah,
your
I'm here to
birth
work with.
charts.
Yeah, I'm here to work with you. With any type of art of gnosis. Um, been studying this for a while, so I can kind of weave things too. So there's a lot of different readings that I can get into. So just go take a look at the services page.
Excellent. Rodney, thank you as always. Great
Yeah, man.
conversation, man. Loved that. And we'll see you next week if not possibly later on in the episode if there's time.
Yeah, that's fine. Sounds good,
Awesome.
man. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, brother.
All right, man.
Awesome stuff, folks. So, on to the post of the week. Make some noise for Rodney. Hit that like button down below. Let us know, that you appreciate it, as well as in the chat. So the post of the week. So this is a reel that I made recently. Spanking instills the authoritarian mindset. And, this is something I feel pretty strongly about. But what I wanted to expose here is the way people responded to it. That's typically what I like to cover with this stuff, is not just unpacking what I actually said, but then seeing how people respond, which is very telling, even indicative of what was actually said, what was not said. It's that emotional reaction. When people respond very emotionally to something, that tells me I'm onto something, that I'm striking a wound, and that is kind of the purpose sometimes, not always, but sometimes that is useful and necessary to expose that it's there, right? Like what does a doctor do when you're going to get something checked out and he's mashing on different parts and he's like, does that hurt? Does that hurt? Because he's looking for that wound, right? That's giving you information. So I'm going to play this clip real quick and then I'll look at some of the comments. Let me know if you can hear this. It should be good to go, though. Oh, hold on. Of if I act out of line, literally violent things will happen to me, and it's okay for them to do it because they're my parents. And that whole, when you question your parents and they say, because I said so.
Yeah.
That there is programming that you don't need to understand it. All you need to know is if you don't do what I say, this bad thing will happen to you. And again, guess who tends to do the spanking, right? Oh, when your father gets home, there will be hell to pay. The mother cares too much because she has more of that feminine instinct. And so by being one who spanks the child, you yourself are disconnected from that masculine, because again, what is the masculine role? The protector. How are you protecting your child when you're the one perpetrating harm against? The one who's supposed to be keeping them safe is telling them you're not even safe from your own parents. That's how hostile the world is. And so if you like these kind of videos, again, do follow me on Facebook. I've been posting about 2 of these a week. But let's have a look at some of these comments. First of all, you got people just laughing. It's like they have nothing of value to say. They just like, and I'm like, can't argue with that logic. Great job making your case. Cool argument, bro. Like, what do you want from me? Putting that, like, what is that actually achieving? Well, guess what? Your kids will be screaming in Target, so good luck, sir. Like, okay. Just the absurdity of some of these people's responses are like, what? First of all, I'm not trying to take myself to Target, much less any children. And you wonder why this generation is so messed up. This is a common theme that you're going to see, is like these people are literally incapable of distinguishing using violence and having boundaries, right? Or just like basically they're saying either you spank your kids or you just have zero boundaries. You let them do whatever they want, run all over the place, act like brats, like as if there's absolutely no middle ground. In fact, those are just the two polar extremes. And there's so much in between. I mean, that's where the bulk of your options actually lie. Those are just the two very outliers. You know what I'm saying? So I don't, in response to what he's saying, wonder why this generation is messed up. I have a deep grasp on it, and you don't. First of all, it's not as simple as one thing. This is another thing that people have an issue. And ironically, we're going to get into that with the topic of today and fixing the world. They think there's, it's just one particular thing that's more addressing a symptom, and that's not going to be a real solution. Such as a lack of parental discipline. It's multifaceted, all-pervasive system of trauma-based mind control. Spanking trauma is one sliver of that, but far from the sole cause. I actually do agree that a lack of parental boundaries is a problem, but violence does much more harm than good into a developing brain. Then there's this guy. That's why you look like an absolute pussy if we don't guide our children. First of all, no punctuation whatsoever, just continuous stream of vomit. If we don't guide our children and don't let them fear anything, that's how you scumbags take over their minds. Nice try with the video. Doesn't work in my household. That's right. I'm a masculine man, and I will raise my daughters to be smart, not dumb, and not to be controlled. So you teach them not to be controlled by controlling them with violence? How does that make any sense? Like, what? And definitely not to be brainwashed, when that's literally how mind control and brainwashing works, is using trauma, programming them to fear you, and then they basically convince themselves to comply, and like that's what they wanted all along, because their consent is all distorted. My dad raised me exactly the same way now, and I respect people. Clearly, you're calling me a pussy on the internet. You've got so much respect for people. And now even more so after he's gone. I realize what a great job he did, because I used to just think like this moron when I was not a kid anymore. And I said, great job, Daddy. Show them how powerful government is and how violence is how you solve problems. Big masculine man that calls everyone pussies. You do realize that brainwashing is literally using trauma and coercion to program the mind, right? Like, it's indistinguishable from what you're doing to your children. And then there was some more here on Facebook. Scumbugs. Yeah, I know. I'm glad you caught that. That was supposed to just kind of slip under the rug there. Spankings are Saturnian. Yeah, but I don't know. That's a bit of, I don't fully resonate with that one. I mean, boundaries are Saturnian, but spanking is not. It's violence, and violence is not an acceptable way. Like, you can't just beat people into submission and say, well, I'm making you a better person, so it's fine. Like, that's just not how natural law works. Spare the rod, spoil the child. This is the dumbest thing I've seen all day. Sounds like this was made by a kid. I say, regurgitates NPC soundbite. Spare the rod, spoil the child. Like, I've never heard that before. Insult, checkmate. Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like you're doing, telling someone no, that they've crossed a line and that there will be consequences. Such NPC behavior. Right, because when somebody yells and screams and act in a way that you don't like, it's okay to just bend them over and spank them. Like, why is it that children have some sort of exception for this type of behavior? If anything, that should be less acceptable, to use violence on children, literally the most defenseless and innocent beings, that we have a responsibility to care for and protect. How is that different? You know what I'm saying? And it's also borderline sexual trauma, because you're spanking them on the ass, and that is a erogenous zone. So I would argue that's adding a sexual trauma as well. I also see you had to use another profile. Stupid, because I happen to respond from my personal instead of through the Wizard Factory page. Like, Those weren't showing. Yep, and we're in desperate need of far more of this. And this was a general sentiment that people were saying is like, oh, this is what's wrong with the world, is that people aren't beating their children into submission, and this is why we have a bunch of spoiled brats. And again, because there's no violence, somehow the only other option is absolutely no boundaries. Let children just run amok and do whatever they want. And, it's just lazy, right? The fact that you can't think of anything better than just to use violence, when if you use your imagination, if you have access to that as a human being, if your brain isn't totally broken, you can come up with ways to teach them, right? It's about education, not just, you're not teaching them a lesson by using this type of method. The only thing you're teaching them is that you're a tyrant, and that, again, violence is okay to get what you want, to get your way, to make people do what you want them to do, which is exactly what government does. And they're not actually learning any value behind what you're trying to get them to do. If it really is for their own good, you should be able to let them understand that, right? Because look, if they're of age to be capable of understanding reason, then use reason, right? And if they're not, then they're not going to understand why you're beating them. So there's literally no good excuse for it. I could go further into it, but I think I've made my point. I just, like I said, mostly just wanted to expose, just look at how people are reacting to this. They're just showing up hostile, disrespectful, ad hominem attacks right out of the gate, instead of actually trying to make a valid point. They're just kind of insisting, well, this is what's wrong with the world and this kind of thing. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about this? Because I do know and I recognize that this is a sensitive topic. I was raised with lots of spanking, very severe, and I recognize it for what it is. I think a lot of people simply have a hard time admitting that they were essentially abused by their parents, even who thought they were doing the right thing, who thought they were acting out of love. I mean, my mom used to tell me, this hurts me more than it hurts you. So it's not easy to admit this stuff, but it is essential to healing, and especially to not continue this type of abuse down the next generation. So again, let me know your thoughts. I'd love to continue the dialogue, even in in the comments on the replay and that sort of thing. So that's the post of the week. Real quick, do check out the Patreon. This is another way, aside from liking, subscribing. Those are the best free methods to support the channel. If you want to contribute, resources, then this is a very simple and easy way to do that, as well as you get some perks in return. $4.99 a month. And we do have now 6 patrons. Those awesome people are Edos Hugh, Slope Oak, AJK Green, Theo Lux, Hexproof Anarchist Joshua Brown, and Stephen Purdy Zeralath, who gave us a rune reading last week. So thank you to all you awesome people. That really does help, and help support what I do, even in just a small way. I try to make this a price point that it adds up, it stacks. The more people jump into that, but also as on the individual, you might not even notice that it's coming out. It's not a huge ask. So again, thank you. Do check that out. And eventually would like to open a new tier with even more involved, basically community-based kind of stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the topical discussion. How to fix the world in 2 steps. So we're going to cover this, two-step plan, I guess it's not really a plan, it's just the diagnosis and prescription to the world's problem that all other world problems extend out of. This idea came to me from a question that someone asked me, what would you do to fix the world? And I thought that was a really great question. Everyone kind of has their own ideas. Everyone, suggests it's this or that, like it's Bitcoin or it's communism or, universal basic income, or I don't know, just all this different kind of stuff. And it's all wrong, right? Poverty, for example, is a problem, but it's a symptom. It's not its own issue necessarily. Like if you can get to the root problem, then all other problems, all other symptoms will naturally go away, right? If you get over your cold, the fever, the runny nose, all that kind of stuff goes away as well. That's the general idea behind this. So notice I'm not saying, my plan. This isn't my plan. This is the solution in a two-step process. This idea of attacking the symptoms really is a mental virus that especially infects the Western world. Trying to prescribe a pill, for the symptoms and this kind of thing, or just, oh, well, this part of your body is acting up, so let's just cut it out, right? Just cut it out. Cut out the symptoms and the problem will heal itself. Well, no, that just makes things worse. So you have to get to the root problems, the root cause. So essentially, this episode is all about the causal factors of what is wrong with the world, why we see so much chaos, suffering, slavery going on. How are we feeling today? Let me know in the comments how you're feeling. What are you drinking? I got some coffee here. And, so humanity has a disease. You don't look at a person with cancer and be like, oh, you're a bad person, you're broken, you're sick. Like, oh, you don't judge and shame them for that. You want to help them. You want to heal them or help them heal. That's what we're looking at. Humanity has a mental disease. And, we're going to be kind of looking at, with this two-step process, the subjective and objective qualities to everything, because that's extremely important. There is kind of that twofold aspect to everything, because we are subjects. As much as we can try to be objective and we can understand objective truths, we can only understand them through the subjective lens, because we cannot not be ourselves. We can't not be a subject. So there's always that little bit of room of interpretation and just different kind of ways of looking at what is objective and having your own personal takes on them. So what is the two-step process to fixing the world? They are truth and healing. Truth and healing. They go hand in hand. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot heal without truth, and you cannot accept truth without some level of healing, right? Or else you would just reject it. You're operating from a toxic worldview. You're going to reject truth. That's what happens when you're trying to talk to somebody that's heavily brainwashed. You're literally telling them truth. Their ears are hearing truth, and that's going into their brain, and they're just like, just like reject it, right? They can't take it because they haven't done the healing that's required. But truth is the only way to heal. So you see, it's like a yin yang, right? Like they're kind of two sides to the same coin, it's really one step, but it's a useful distinction to break them down into two concepts like a masculine and feminine, because just like male and female, they're the same, but they're two different kind of distinct forms that compose the bigger picture, if that makes sense. So truth is healing, and healing is truth. That's how you can look at this. I mean, so it was funny because I was like, which one should I talk about first? Because they're kind of the same. But let's keep the main thing, right? Truth is always most important. It is the true authority, and we are subject to it. So, we ourselves as subjects are even a manifestation of truth. Truth is the one, the all, the first, and then everything else is a consequence or a byproduct of truth. Awesome. Thank you for being here. Feeling good. Some ginger beer, water and shamanic drumming. Framing, very cool. Sounds like some good self-care practices. Love that. We should fix ourselves first in order to change the world. Right. It's an inside job. But what are you taking into your inside from the outside? Truth, right? We're born with a blank slate. And then for the moment we open our eyes, or before that, even as soon as we're born, even within the womb, we're still having an experience. We're still taking in inputs to our sensory, perception, and forming ideas about the world out there, right? And about ourselves. So it's kind of a delicate process to kind of unfold because it's so like intertwined. So just bear with me as I'm sort of unraveling and unpacking this. So the first step is, of course, like I said, truth. But not just truth. Like, truth out there doesn't do us any good. We have to learn truth. We have to learn about natural law, morality, and freedom, and then teach others to do the same. So this is the first step, is learning truth and teaching others as an extension of that. And dissolve the belief in authority through education. That's the first step. It really has to come down to that, like natural law, morality, and freedom. So authority is a myth that does not actually exist in truth. Well, external authority, I should say. Authority is a thing, but truth is an authority as a higher authority. No person has a higher authority over you unless it's regarding what is rightfully theirs. You are not rightfully theirs. That's slavery. But if, say, you go and visit someone in their home, well, they are the authority in their home regarding their stuff, things you can and can't do, right? That's the nuance there. So, I mean, it's important to touch on that because that's where people will take things and twist them around and, create a lot of confusion when there doesn't need to be. So learn about truth, take it in, teach others, and truly come to understand truth. Not just hearing something and then regurgitating it and having no idea what you're talking about, or being unable to answer like questions about it. So no other human has any actual authority over another unless consented to. Keyword, consent. We are all equal in rights, and no person or group of people have any more rights than anyone else. The moment we put our freedom and survival in the hands of someone else, we become a slave. So that's the first big problem. We have slavery. And most of the other problems that we have, like poverty, mental illness, these are all symptoms of the condition of slavery that we are in. And because people don't understand natural rights, natural law, truth, morality, freedom, That's why slavery exists, is allowed, is perpetuated, and even insisted that it must exist. And this is the only way. Otherwise, we would have, I don't know, slavery. Like, we have to have this slave system or else people would enslave us. Like, that's the circular logic that we're dealing with. So one way to look at this is the two pillar aspect of freedom, sovereignty, and that is the non-aggression principle and the self-defense principle. This is also another masculine and feminine dynamic. Do no harm, take no shit, right? Do not aggress or initiate aggression or harm or violence against another person. And then if someone does this to you, you have the right to self-defense. In other words, you're using force, not violence. Violence is to violate someone. Using force is an act of peace, not violence, because you're restoring the peace. You're protecting and defending what is rightfully yours. Your property, your body, your freedom, those sort of things. And the law of freedom, which is the direct correlation of freedom and morality. In other words, the more morality, the more moral a society or a planet becomes, the more freedom will ensue. Because that means essentially morality, meaning all the people in the world are respecting each other, their rights, their property, and not violating each other, right? That's the definition of freedom. So the more morality, the more freedom. The less morality, the less freedom. So because we live on a slave planet, what does that tell you? That there must be one reason for that. That we are an immoral species in the aggregate. That doesn't mean that moral people don't exist. It means that there are more immoral people that make up the majority than there are moral people, because that is factually what is creating the condition that we're living in currently. That's why this is the cause. There's no way around this. Until we understand and come to embody and act in alignment with objective morality, slavery will be the condition that exists. No exceptions, period, end of story. That's just what it is. So morality is the solution. Knowledge of morality and integration, embodiment, and moral behavior. Once this step has been established, governments can no longer exist, as they are all founded and predicated upon the lie of authority, and in reality they have none. Therefore, they cannot do any of the things that they do in order to function that most people would be jailed for doing, such as taxation, legislation, incarceration, licensing, fines. Pretty much everything the government does is immoral, is evil. And if a common person was to do any of those things, we'd call them a psychopath, because that's exactly what the system is. It's psychopathic. All actions of government are based in violence and coercion by way of legislation and law enforcement. These are rights that they do not actually have to take, or actions that they do not have to take. Taxation is the illegitimate claim upon the time. Think about this definition. The illegitimate claim upon the time, energy, and fruits of labor of another. We have another name for that, which is slavery. To govern another is to rule. So that is the first thing. That is the first step, is knowledge, right? Not just truth, not just information, but knowledge and understanding of that knowledge. Taking it in, truly understanding it to the point that your actions are showing that, right? Because you could know cigarettes are bad for you, right? Lots of people know smoking is bad. They still smoke because they haven't fully integrated that that information. If they did, they would stop. They would understand, like, it's an act of care for yourself and care for truth. They would have to stop. But that's a good segue into the second part here, which is healing. Because why do people know smoking is bad and yet continue to do it? Because they have some wound, some type of psychological issue that they're satiating that overrides that knowledge. It's like, yeah, I know it's bad, but I have to, I need it because there's this other aspect of myself that's compelling me to do it, if that makes sense. It's compulsory, right? It's an addiction. Why does any addiction happen? It's not like people just wake up one day and they're like, hey, I think jamming a needle full of heroin into my arm sounds like a great idea. No, it's because the current form of reality as they experience it is somehow worse than the reality of using a drug like that and watching themselves literally wither away and die. So you have to heal the aspect of them that is compelling them to have that mindset and behavior before the truth is enough. The truth isn't enough on its own. This is why they have to go hand in hand. You can know something's bad for you. You have to do the healing work in addition to fully actuate the change in yourself. Full integration is the key. Very well said. Fred Gingras in the house. I think I said your name right this time. I heard you say that on Mark's show. And so I took note of that because I think most people, they're just like, Gingras? That's old Fred Gingras out there. So welcome to the show. Nice to see you in here. So healing, let's get into that part. Learning to heal yourself and apply that knowledge. So again, I'm not just saying healing. I'm saying learn to heal. Knowledge, truth, it's still present within that, and apply that knowledge as well. You can know all about breath work and meditation and psychedelics, or you just take your pick of many different healing modalities, and not do a damn thing about it. That change has to come through a choice. And usually, unfortunately, most people don't make that choice until they've had enough of their suffering. There's Saturn again, like we were talking about earlier. Saturn is going to keep putting that pressure on you, keep holding your feet into the fire until you're like, okay, fuck, I can't do this anymore. Something's got to give. My experience is not changing. So I need to change. That's the only way to actually change something. Applied knowledge is wisdom. Exactly. So applying the knowledge of healing, like you can just talk about healing, but what does that mean? What is healing? Healing means to be whole. So trauma fractures your psychology. It fractures your identity, who you think you are. So you become incomplete. You're in pieces. There's gaps, there's holes, and incongruencies. So holing, is to heal those gaps, those wounds, and to become a fully integrated person. It also means integrating your trivium, your trinity, thoughts, emotions, and actions all in alignment. When you have mental illness, what's a common hallmark of that? Well, you've got all these erratic feelings and thoughts, and they're all disparate with each other, and then your actions are erratic and they don't really match your thoughts or your feelings, and it's all like this chaos of disorder and incohesion. When you heal, you're able to align all of those, bring them back into alignment, and it becomes a harmonic orchestra, each all coming together. A change is not always improvement, and improvement comes always from change. I like that. That's very true, because a person can definitely, by declining in their state, they're changing, but that's a negative change. That's not good. But an improvement is a change inherently, and that would be an inherently good, by definition. To improve is to become better. So I like that distinction there. I'm still working on that full integration. Hey, we all are, brother. No one's perfect, and I'm certainly not saying, oh, you just do some healing work and then you're perfectly fine and all is good. No, it's an ongoing process. Not only because this is, again, the catalyst to evolution, and evolution does not stop. This is to become the alchemist. You're always transmuting shadow and the, prima materia into becoming a better, more aligned, more actualized version of yourself. And let's throw in the nice little fact that we're constantly under attack of trauma-based mind control. So no matter what you do or where you go, you're always under a barrage of more trauma, more manipulation and mind control happening. So again, that process must always be going on just to break even at this point, just to maintain any level of sanity. Because the people that aren't doing any of this work, they're just going deeper and deeper into a state of neurosis and psychopathy. And this is the problem. So hence, this is why this is the solution. This is the only solution. There's no way around it. This is what is required. Healing is somatic just as much as psychological. That's what makes them more distinct. So when you think about truth, think about knowledge, it's often very heady, it's very cerebral, right? But healing is to get back into your body, and that's an integration as well, because we're often totally disconnected from the neck down, right? We're always up here in our neurotic thinking and our programs and this and that, and we're cut off from the body, from the intelligence and wisdom of the body, as well as just feeling okay in our own bodies. There's all this shame and internal emotion that we're trying to numb and stuff down and, dull with pills and distractions and all this kind of stuff. It's so toxic. So this is what I'm talking about. To know is not simply enough. You have to reconnect with your body and get the trauma that's trapped inside you physiologically out. Purge it, because it's just going to keep roping you in to the same loops, the same unconscious feedback loop again and again. To know is not simply enough, though it's important. That's the integration. And by taking truth in, that is going to be a healing process in and of itself. Fred, I agree with you. Worst is lying to oneself. That's the first thing, because that is the key to both knowledge and healing. This is the first step to both of these aspects. If you are lying to yourself, you can't take in truth because there's shit in the way. You're trying to take something in, or it's coming at you, and it's just getting blocked and deflected by bullshit that you refuse to let go of. Same with the healing aspect. There is like I said, healing is also a form of purging. And you have to get that out of the way as well, or it's going to be creating blockage for taking in the catalyst for actually making a change. This is the internal battle that has nothing to do with the news or politics or any conspiracy theory, right? Those things are important. You got to pay attention to what's going on in the world and have knowledge and all this kind of stuff. But again, it's often used as a distraction. Lots of people get really, really caught up in the conspiracy stuff, and they're doing this and they're doing that. And have you heard about this going on? And it's all out there to distract you from what's going on in here, which is where the work must begin. If you're not working here and here first, you can't really have any real effect in the external world. So letting go, wait a minute, I jumped ahead. Unlearning and abandoning false beliefs, religion, and doctrine. These are the programs that get grafted onto you by way of trauma-based mind control. You have to get rid of those, right? And so again, you have to let go of them through the healing process, but also taking in truth, and I do think truth has a potency on its own to break up that calcification. If you hear it again and again and again, it can break down the walls of that psychological hypnosis state that you're in. Just like they use repetition and classical condition to program and brainwash us, it can work in the positive as well. So just having that friend or that family member that you talk to, every family reunion, every year, whatever, you just plant those seeds, keep planting those seeds. They may not be someone who's actively doing healing work and any of that kind of stuff. Most people aren't. They're just doing well enough to keep their job going, pay the bills, and watch a little football on the weekends kind of thing. But by planting those seeds little bit by little bit, that can be the thing that starts that process of, like, once they start hearing it and it's slowly but surely like seeping through all the neural connections in their brain and starting to actually take hold and like grow roots inside their mind, that can be the thing that eventually one day they're just like talking with you and you're like, man, you know what? You're right. Like we've been talking about this for years, and it makes more and more sense the more we get into it. And then at some point they may take that as the moment to change. It's like, you know what? You're right. You've been right about this. I need to do something, whether it's changing their diet, turning off the TV. It starts with a small thing, right? You're not going to just magically turn into some super enlightened person and start levitating right off the bat, right? It takes a long time. It takes a long time to get in the state of brainwashing and mind control that we're under now. So reversing that is not going to be any different. So, yeah, letting go of those beliefs, through the induction of truth, letting them dissolve and fade away. And then that actually is creating space for you to then take new information in and have what I call a dismantling, where once you take in a new belief, such as, say, authority is illegitimate, for example, well, then once you've accepted that as an axiom, there's going to be a period of time where you're processing that. And it's going to start knocking down all the walls in your mind of what has been built upon that presupposition as programming. I've gone through this process many times in my life. Every time there's a huge paradigm shift, you have to go through that process of relearning everything, re-evaluating, taking another look, right, at things and what you previously understood or how you were previously looking at them, and then re-evaluating with that new perspective and say, well, if this is true, what does that mean about this now? And what does that mean about this now? And you're just reapplying that lens to everything. This is part of the healing process. So that's extremely important. Letting go of toxic paradigms, self-loathing, and learned helplessness and self-destructive behaviors. So this is all part of the healing process as well. It's not enough to just say, oh, well, I don't believe in government anymore, or I'm not, religious anymore. It's like, am I poisoning myself through smoking or diet or what I'm watching on TV, right? Am I acting in self-destructive ways? Even though you may have accepted some very fundamental truths, you have to go all the way. You're not whole. You're not healing if you're not whole. If you're just healing some things, but not not others. You don't just do a little healing and then you're like, oh, well, I fixed the main stuff, so now I'm good. No, you never get stagnant. Stagnation is death. That's natural law, fundamental aspect is it's an ongoing process, and that's you're just going to have to accept that, and honestly see it as a good thing. You know, a lot of people, I think they don't want to start this because they're like, well, but it's so much work and it'll take years and a lifetime. And it's like, yeah, you can see that as some kind of like depressing like burden to look at, or you can see it as, if I start today, then every day I'm going to get better. You see it as something to look forward to rather than dread, right? I get to spend years and years and years improving. That's a beautiful thing. It's all about your mindset. You've got to change that. And that's comes to that learned helplessness, right? But I would have to figure everything out myself. And, what book can I read that'll just tell me all the magical steps and all this kind of stuff? Again, you haven't grown up. So the next step or next aspect of this healing process is stepping into cosmic adulthood, right? Stepping into your personal power, sovereignty, and personal responsibility. No one's going to save you. No one's going to tell you all the answers. No one's going to figure it out for you. No one's going to tell you who you are, who you should be, what you should be doing. Just let go of all of that shit. Stand up, be an adult, and take that on. That's the only way forward. Reconnecting with nature. This is a huge aspect of our domestication, is that we've been totally cut off and disconnected from our natural environment. And nature is the greatest teacher. So you have to get back into nature. And that doesn't mean just, well, going camping now and then. And it doesn't also mean throw away your cell phone, turn off the internet, all this kind of stuff either. I believe fully in being a modern day pagan or a modern day magician where you fully embrace the time you live in. You utilize all the tools that are at your disposal that objectively can be leveraged for power and your own betterment. You don't have to reject all that stuff just because there's a negative aspect to it. They're just tools. It means you can balance living in the modern world, using modern tools, having that aspect to your life, but also being able to step out of that artificial environment and see what's real and connect with natural processes. This is not just about birds and trees and stuff like that. It's that too. And I do think there's a lot of aspects of mental health and healing by getting out of the city and going and spend time in nature, ideally by yourself, with no one else around, just directly communing with a natural environment. But nature is everywhere, even in the cities, right? Nature is just reality. It's natural law. It's everywhere at all times. And having that discernment is also key. And finally, activating people to their divine nature and purpose, and activate their lives towards expanding their awareness, giving their unique gifts, and actualizing their fullest potential as free and sovereign creators. So when you've done the healing work, when you've taken in truth and truly come to understand it, you're going to have these things as byproducts. You will be stepping into cosmic adulthood. You'll be getting back into nature. You'll be letting go of toxic beliefs and self-destructive behaviors. And you will naturally be desiring and naturally gravitating towards finding and taking on your purpose, living it. What are your gifts? What are the things that make you you? That's so important. Most people have no idea who they are. They've never even thought about it. They're afraid of themselves. They're afraid of their power. They're afraid of their potential. this is a crucial aspect to fixing the world, to creating a better world, is everyone coming to understand who they are. Because when you remove the programming, right, culture and collectivism, what is in its place, right? It's like what, because people derive their sense of self from these things. Well, I'm an American and I'm a Christian and I'm this and I'm that. They're collectivizing themselves and attaching their identity to it. When you take that away, who the fuck are you? That's for you to figure out, because it's all inside you. You're the only one with that ability to look within to discover that truth. But that's where your real power is, because no one can be you better than you can. And you is what we need. We don't need another slave, automaton, soldier, worker, right? Cog in the machine. We need a perfectly integrated, or I shouldn't say perfectly, but what I mean is a beautiful, unique individual coming out and being that fearlessly, and finding out those gifts and talents and giving those to the world, contributing to the collective through those things, right? Whether it's art, architecture, science, healing. Like, there are so many ways to be useful, to be of service to others in your own unique way that no one else could ever recreate your own individual version of. That's what we need, is every person giving that, rather than just conforming that, suppressing who they really are and conforming into a block of a pyramid of the control system. So hopefully that resonates. Again, hit that like below if you agree. If you want people to see this message, to really contemplate what's being said here, if you love and care about truth, smash the like. Let more people see this and find out who they are, and step into that, becoming a spiritual warrior, becoming human again. You cannot actualize your purpose when living in slavery. So freedom is absolutely essential to our spiritual existence and evolution. If freedom is taken away, you cannot be who you are. There's limitations, there's coercion. Not only is limiting your actual choices, but it's suppressing you cognitively. It's keeping you down in lower functionality of your brain and cutting you off from the higher forms of intelligence via the neocortex, especially the prefrontal, and your morality and your empathy. So, a few little points to kind of drive this home as well, and then we'll wrap up, and then hopefully take some questions. In fact, I'll go ahead and drop the link in the chat and pin it. So you should see that in the chat there and pinned at the top. So be thinking about your questions. You could, whether you want to join through video or audio is totally up to you. And it doesn't necessarily have to be what we're talking about today. It's really ask me anything, whatever you feel compelled to. So notice the things that I did not say. This is not a two-step plan to save the world. Saving people teaches them nothing. They don't change, they don't learn or grow from that. It is essentially enablement, and they will just fuck it up all over again until they evolve past the mindset that created the problem. So this is an issue with the Abrahamic mindset of saving the world. This is not about saving anyone. That is the least loving thing that you could do for someone, is enable their own learned helplessness, their victimhood, instead of teaching them how to do it themselves. I didn't save people from poverty, right? Heal humanity's self-worth, put them on their purpose, and eliminate any systems that would infringe upon like the free market, as well as people healing and becoming moral people, then poverty would be almost non-existent. Again, that's a symptom. Solve the root problems, the symptoms will take care of themselves. I didn't say disband the government. Without knowledge of morality and freedom, people would just create a new government in its place. Evolution is always better than revolution. Evolution is moving up and onward. Revolution is just revolving, right? Going around in circles. I didn't say, save people from sin. Nothing is learned in the Christian narrative as well. It's all based on violence and coercion, just like all cults are. Obey God's law or else you'll be burned in the fires of hell forever. No second chances, no do-overs, no learning your lesson, right? You got one shot at life. If you mess that up, you're just fucked. There's no room for learning the lesson, because even so, your good works are not good enough. You don't get to heaven by being a good person. You just get to heaven by having faith, accepting an external power as your savior, because accepting you're helpless, you can't do it yourself, you have to be saved. And so again, nothing is learned through that mentality. It's anti-spiritual. Christianity and Abrahamic religion is anti-spiritual. I'll just point blank say it like that. I didn't say get rid of drugs, toxic foods, depression, suicide, war. You see the point here. The general theme is these are all symptoms. They're not root problems. They are problems of the world, and they're unfortunate. And I'm sympathetic to that situation, that people are suffering from these things. But again, healing and education will literally take care of all of those problems naturally. When you love yourself and you know better, you will have zero desire to poison yourself or to go like bomb and shoot people in a different country that you've never met before, or take your own life, or poison your body with drugs. You know what I'm saying? And finally, I didn't say force anything. Evolution must be a voluntary process based on understanding and free will, never force. Again, the coercion aspect of government, of religion, of any cult is anti-spiritual, because through force, there is no learning. You have to actually understand. It's exact same as what I said with the authoritarian parenting of saying, why? Oh, because I said so. That's not teaching you anything other than blind obedience. It's not a virtue. So that's pretty much what I had. Let me know your thoughts below. Do you agree, disagree? Do you have something to add? And feel free to take me up on the call-in. That link is below. We'll take some questions here if we have some. If you want to ask a question in the chat, just drop it below with the words question in all caps and then your question following that, so I'll know that's your intention. I'm late. What's happening? Tommy, glad you're here. Thanks for tuning in. If not, better late than never. Feel free to watch the replay, take it back from the beginning. So if anyone wants to jump in, now's the time to do it. I'm happy to take your questions. Again, it doesn't have to be about what I talked about today. It can be really ask me anything. We'll get into it. If you just have something you want to say, something you want to share with me and the audience. And feel free to only do audio if you're not comfortable being on screen. I totally understand that. Appreciate all those positive comments. I think Rodney's off doing something. Rodney, if you can hear me, feel free to jump in as well if you have any thoughts or commentary. Any questions, guys? Oh, yeah. I know something I can... Fred says I'm having Francesco Sani in 10 minutes on the Libercast. Very cool. I've had him on the podcast once, so tell him I said hello and tell him he's welcome to jump on the show sometime. I'm sure that'll be great. And Fred, I loved the recent episode that you did with Mark. Thought that was really, really awesome, man. I wanted to. I keep forgetting about this, but I need to talk about the Trivium, the Funnel 3 conference. Funnel stands for Freedom Under Natural Law. Is a 2-day event online, completely free. Lots of great speakers, including Mark Passio, Richard Grove, David Rodriguez, who was on the show a couple weeks ago. You got Brandon Martin, Mario West, Derek, Leslie Powers, Will Keller. I believe Will and Chris Jansen are the ones organizing this. Again, it's totally free. It's 2 days of just absolute packed, vital, essential knowledge. These are people who are doing the work. These are people who have, what I was talking about earlier, they've taken in knowledge, they've done some healing, and they are finding their purpose. And they're acting with courage in the world to share that with others, to be an example. You're back. What's up, Rodney?
Hey, how you doing, man?
Great, man. Yeah, I'm just talking about Trivium real quick, and then was wanting to hear some of your thoughts on what I discussed. But so definitely check this out. Again, I'm going to be presenting my Trivium hacking presentation. 1 second here. I can get this. There we go. There's the cover photo. I'm going to be making a post on Facebook and such here soon, but I haven't actually shared this yet. But I'm extremely excited about this. Honestly, some of the best work I've ever done. Gets into mind control in a very, very, very deep way. In fact, the conference, I only have an hour and 15 minutes to have a presentation. The full presentation is probably going to end up being closer to 3 hours. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post or share a shortened version with the conference, and that'll be like an hour long. And then at the same time, once that goes live, I will have the full extended version here on the channel. So definitely, highly recommend checking that out because it's not something that can be covered in 1 hour. So the shorter version will be basically like a teaser, and I can't recommend enough watching the full thing. So again, it's free. Check it out. Register at freedomundernaturallaw.com. You will not regret it. Tons of really great stuff. Sarah, welcome to the show. You got your camera open, or are you do audio only?
Hello. Excuse me.
Hello.
I'm on. I don't know if that's too loud. Hold on. I'm on my headphones, so I don't know if that's too loud or anything.
That sounds good to me.
Okay.
How are you doing today, my friend?
Pretty good.
Hey, Sarah.
Hello.
You need a drink of water or something? A little scratch?
No, unfortunately, it's just a little early in the morning, and it's kind of a cystic fibrosis problem. I sound like a chronic smoker all the time. It's pretty terrible.
So, yeah, welcome. Thanks for calling in. Welcome to the show. What do you have to say for us today?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, the show, I've been enjoying it so far. I really liked the topic that you were going over. And it just was a lot of good points, especially with the article that you were talking about, and just how to teach people properly in, the way that they need to be taught and how it works for them so that they can finally end up, knowing truth fully. And everybody's individual and needs different kinds of, it's the way I've experienced it. They just need different ways to figure it out. So, however people have to do it, I'm all for it.
Right. Every person is going to be different. Their psychological makeup is different. Their unique gifts and talents and abilities and purpose is going to be different. And their wounding is different. We all have different traumas. We've been through different things. And so what healing might look like for you is going to be different for each person as well. So this is why I was talking in the beginning about the subjective and objective aspect to everything. You need to learn the objective truth, the principles that apply to everyone unanimously, natural law, morality, but also be able to take that and understand your own individual psychology, know thyself as well, and how that applies, and in your own, the shadow work that you're going to have to do that, and overcome your unique personalized problems and obstacles, essentially.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I haven't done a lot of internet type of work. As far as that goes, most of my experience is actually working with the physical community. And I did that for 5 or 6 years. And I did events. I worked with a community center, and I would do weekly groups and, teach them how to do something really basic like knitting or crochet or something. But we would always be talking, the conversations, I would kind of lead them into the path of talking about stuff like this. And it's they all came from different cultures, different belief systems, different countries. It was very international, the kind of people I got in, men, women, children. And they all came from somewhere else. But, working with people, one-on-one, in real time like that is so much different than doing it on the internet, because you can get a better sense of what they need. And even if I have found the majority of the time when I have worked with people that I thought needed some better, or just maybe some kind of clearer guidance of some kind, or they were lost with something or had a specific type of problem, I found that once you kind of get through all of the, I like to call it the grime and dirt and all the stuff that makes up a personal psychology, all the kind of nonsense stuff, that kind of builds up over years and years of conditioning and society and all that kind of stuff. I kind of found the majority of the time people would come all to the same conclusions, and they may use different, they may phrase it a different way, but they always came to the same conclusion about what actual truth and morality is when you were really putting it out there, or when I would really put it out there like that, and they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I get it. And I could, excuse me, I could see that change in them in real time, week to week to week. And it's I've had people tell me, oh, you can't change people and you can't alter the way their conditioning works, or how they think, or if they're Catholic or Christian or whatever, if they're from, the Middle East. You can't change the way people think deep down internally. And I don't believe that. I mean, because I have personally experienced and seen that change in people. And
I would specify that you can't change people, but you can greatly influence them, because the change still has to come within, and it's their own psychology that's going to be, like we said, different for each person. So it's not a guarantee. You can't just wave a wand and change them, but you can have a large degree of influence to a person, especially if they're even remotely open to actually having a conversation. So that's how I
Oh,
would
absolutely. Yeah,
kind of specify.
absolutely. I agree with that completely. The person themselves, and that would be something I would go over with people from time to time. It's like that nobody can actually make any kind of significant change in their life unless they're really looking for it. And
Mm.
I think what ended up happening with my group that I was doing, my groups that I was working with, was that people would kind of find me because they were kind of looking for a change,
Yep.
because they were tired of like just the general kind of oppression that would come, or the society pressure that would happen. And
Mm.
they were tired of being judged for whatever it was. And like, I think one of the biggest problems I've seen just working with people one on one like that is that the reason why there isn't more people who are kind of taking in some of this information, at least to some degree, is because they're afraid of society as a general whole and the judgment that it's going to place on them. And that is in itself, like, I understand where that comes from, but it's still fear,
Yeah,
and fear is slavery.
exactly.
So
That's why I call what I call the big three of mind control. It's great. Like all of this is going to be in my presentation, so the extended at least. What I call the big three is uh, religion, government, which those are like the first things many people think of. Those are the obvious ones, but the not so obvious one that's very critical is culture. That kind of makes like the unholy trinity of mind control, because culture is that societal aspect. It's more horizontal than it is top down mind control. And it's falling into what you're talking about here, Sarah, is that fear of judgment, the fear of ostracization, alienation. Those are cultural based, like, dynamics that we're talking about here.
yeah, absolutely. And with that, I would kind of, from my personal experience, I would say culture is kind of the worst, because the craziest stuff would be said to me, and I would just be like, I don't know about that, because it would be like more directed towards me. Like I would actually get people who would, judge me or resent me, even because I, like, they would ask me questions like, "Oh, where are your people from? Where are you from? Like who's your people?" And when they say that, they mean like the town you grew up in, or your family, or whatever. And like, it's kind of an awkward question for me, because I can't say I'm from any people. I can't say like my family is quite small. And like, it's just like I don't have like this huge tribe of family, and I don't have a lot of that stuff. And I moved around my entire childhood from,
Mm.
different states, different towns, didn't even stay in school very long, different schools all over the country. And I moved into other countries as well. And like, some of the people who are really, really attached to this idea that you have to be part of this specific culture, or this, like, you have to have a place,
Right.
that is your home. And I'm like, well, my home is where I hang my hat. And that is how I kind of grew up. And wherever my hat and my immediate family, like my husband and my daughter are, and like the people who I bring into that circle, that's where my home is. And it doesn't really matter what structure I'm in. So when I would have that kind of conversation, there'd be one or two people who would just absolutely resent me for it because, and I don't know if that's like a inner psychological issue for them where they're just, maybe they somehow feel trapped
Yes.
in that, but they want to justify it and make it like everybody has to have this, or I'm mentally ill or something like that. They have these like really odd ideas about it.
It's just like what I was sharing about the spanking earlier. It's like, well, I was spanked, and so this is how it has to be. And if you're not doing that, then you're fucking these children up and all this kind of stuff.
Exactly. And like with my daughter, we just taught her, we like to think we taught her right. We taught her how to, behave with care and courtesy, generally speaking, and thought, emotion, and action. She's she's just an amazing kid. And like, that comment that one guy goes, well, good luck having them scream in a Target. I'm like, well, my kid never did that. So
Yeah.
I don't know what other people, I wasn't anything special. We're not special or smarter than anyone else. It's just, our kid didn't do stuff like that. So,
they say yelling is not done to cover physical distance, but emotional distance. So why do you think your child is screaming? Could it be maybe that they feel disconnected? Maybe they feel unheard and unseen and not respected by you, who constantly put your hand on them and stuff like that. Like, again, what does that tell you about your own parenting?
Yep, I would say it's just a result of the parents not understanding thought, emotion, and action to some degree.
Their child's needs, they're not meeting their child's needs, and then punishing them for it. Like, that's really messed up.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe a generational issue as well. It just goes on and on and on like that until somebody comes along and like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to behave like that. And I don't know. I think just some parents are so afraid that their kids are going to turn into like some sort of degenerate that they end up, using that fear and just putting that onto their kids like that in that kind of way. And I don't know if I can support that kind of behavior, but I also can't tell other people what to do with their kids either. All I can do is try and tell people that it's not maybe the way to go.
Yeah, it's a very complex issue. It's, it's not black and white necessarily, but I definitely agree with everything you're saying. And great points. I'm curious what was your intention when you started this in-person group? Because that's something that I don't have a lot of experience in. It's just a different path that I've taken with the online stuff, but I think each kind of has its own pros and cons. Like you were saying, like when you're in person, you can really connect with people one-on-one. When I'm showing up and making these shows, it's a lot more kind of just, I try to make it general. And so hopefully people can resonate and connect with it as best as possible as individuals, but I have to kind of just make it for everyone as opposed to individualized. But when you're having, you're building actual relationships with people in a live setting, and you can speak to their specific situation, their experiences, where their awareness is at the time.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, it's like being online is like really strange for me, and I'm kind of getting used to, like, I was trying to, with the online work I've done so far, I was trying to bring that sense of being in person with people do at least the same kind of talking points or conversations that I did with the group, because I feel like, that really helped. And it helped people who were searching. But with doing it, like I am like so not an internet person and doing things. I'm trying to get better at that. But doing things one-on-one with people, like you're sitting next to them, and sometimes it would only be, I would do it twice a week, and I did it through. I would teach people how to knit and crochet. We'd just be sitting there, and it's like, you're keeping their hands busy. Even when they're learning, you're keeping their hands busy. And when I started giving them information, tidbits, what I thought they could handle, what I thought they were ready for, what I thought they could take in and go, that's a good point. I'm going to stick it in my consideration file in my head. And I did that for like 5 or 6 years. And I found and sometimes there was one person in the group, sometimes there was 30 people in the group. It was like really, there was a lot of diversity that happened with this group for the time I did it. And being next to somebody, I would only say the reason why I like it more, I enjoy it more, and I feel like it's a little bit more effective, even though it's a lot of work and a lot of energy you put out. You're sitting next to them, and you could hold their hand, or you could hug them, or even just sit there and like be next to them, and the electrical fields of your biology, your bodies are kind of hitting each other. So it can kind of, and you can see their body language, and see their facial expressions, and you can look actually like more clearly, like you can see their eyes, you can see how they're kind of presenting themselves. And I would say you can do that too with like, these kind of things, the video live kind of stuff as well. But I think it's just more effective when you're like sitting next to them, and you've got like their energy is just in the room, and it's making everything like, good in the room. The energy was usually pretty positive, and that really went a long way for everybody collectively in the group, where you could have like an actual conversation. And I've had like pretty deep conversations, thorough conversations about, morality, ethics, natural law, medical stuff, all sorts of things. And I've had them with Catholics and Christians and people who were Islamic, and people from Africa, and people who were from Asia, or Buddhist, or whatever their culture identified them with, or with whatever they were, raised with. And I would just say that, I know it's important to get to the heart of the matter, and that really at the end of the day, there's, proper language for all of this stuff. But when I was having conversations with all these different people, I didn't get too much backlash. Yeah. And all of them, no matter what culture they were, what religion they were, what they believed, whether they were even like atheists. I've talked to atheists who would be like, yeah, okay, yeah, I get it. And like you could see when they were being genuine, because you're sitting there right next to them, looking into their eyes, and you could tell when they're like, okay, you're Looney Tunes. You could tell that. You can really like be in that moment and be like, and get it, and make that connection. And I've personally, like I've had some people who would say to me like, Sarah, that doesn't happen. You can't do it that way. And I'm like, but I've actually personally experienced this myself, not on the internet, not through forums or talking to people in comments, but by sitting next to them and showing them, just with my body language, that like, it doesn't matter to me, whatever it is you got going on in your head. What matters to me is how you behave and whether or not you understand actual morality and ethical behavior and how that is. And that's what matters to me. And after that, when people understand at least that, they can kind of grow from there, even if it's slow and painful.
Absolutely. I love what you said about your being in their presence and the sort of like the auric fields mingling and stuff. That's largely what's missing from the online context. It's like I was talking about earlier, where the head is severed from the body. The online space, whether in videos or especially in like people's having these comment back and forth dialogues and debates and things like that, is it's very just head to head, going head to head, as they say, right? Without that physical connection and presence, that cultivates that, hey, I'm a human being, you're a human being. Let's talk to each other like human beings and understand you're not my enemy and I'm not your enemy. We're just having a conversation here, and our goal should be to get to the truth, not to win, not to be right, not to put the other person down, but hey, to conversate literally means to learn and to grow together, and that's what it should be about.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, because it's like there's too much out there that's saying like, oh, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, nah, 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 and like everybody wants to get very defensive, and it's like, look, it's like, guys, like maybe you can learn from me and maybe I can learn from you, and let's just see where that conversation takes us. And I would say, not to really point any specific type of group out, because they're, everybody's different and unique, but like the only time I've ever had any real pushback with any of this kind of information is if I was talking to, if you've ever heard of this, something called a socialist democrat, which is a totally crazy combination to me, but it's just like, not that I support any kind of party of any kind, I think it's all pretty silly, but
yeah.
It's the only time I've ever had any real pushback in regards to talking about this kind of stuff, is that particular group. And it's like on a larger scale, like not every single one of them, but I don't know if you've ever heard of that as a thing, but I think it's pretty big in Europe.
Yeah. Socialism and communism, leftist ideologies do tend to be even more religious than the opposite, because ironically, the right tend to be a lot more minarchist. So it's like their authoritarianism comes more from the religious side of it. So like leftists, their religion is more government. Rightists, their religion is more religious, spiritual than it is in the physical.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Great points, Sarah. Thank you for your call. I'd love to have you on the show sometime. If there's time before I leave, maybe we could do an episode. If not, definitely once I'm on the road and get the show up and running again, I'd love to have you on as a guest. And I've watched some of your recent stuff and thought it was great. And I'm really grateful to see more and more people stepping into this type of work. So I definitely want to, support you and give you a place to be heard and seen.
Oh, well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, that could be kind of fun. I think I would probably enjoy that too. And if you wanted to send me over your email, and maybe whatever because I want to talk about the topics that you have kind of planned, because I think they're pretty good points and things that should be covered. So if you have any ideas, I mean, I have ideas, but
yeah, I'll reach out to you on Facebook and we can brainstorm just what we can get into. I mean, I have lots of ideas just in a queue, like in notes and stuff, but I kind of just pick stuff randomly. I mean, I literally came up with this episode like this morning as I was, after breakfast, and, got the idea, came up with a title, made the thumbnail, So it's very can be on the fly. So anyway,
Well, cool.
yeah,
That's
that'd be great.
radical.
Yeah.
And it's been a great show so far. Well, your whole topic, I was like, yeah, somebody should talk about that.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your call. Thanks for having the courage to come on here. Hopefully, over time, more people will kind of get more emboldened. It seems like folks are a little bit shy to come on, which I totally understand. But, you know, for those thinking about doing the great work and coming out and doing this, like this is a great place to start, right? If you can't join on a call, you know, then doing a video or starting your own channel is a you know, a much bigger leap. So maybe it's an area you can kind of dip your toes in and see the water's fine, you know, and I don't bite. So
Well, thank you, and thanks for having me, and thanks, Rodney, for your weather report.
yeah,
Thank you, Sarah.
pleasure having you, Sarah. We'll talk soon. All right.
Later.
Later. All right. So Rodney, you know, before we close out, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on the topics that I discussed today, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
Yeah, you know, I think that the next 3 years, things are they're gonna change big time. I mean, the astrology is pointing to it in context to a lot of gate shifting that's going to be taking place, and major shifts with planetary orbs and aspects. A lot of planets on the cusps of things. So we're going to be moving from, you know, energies from one to another, and so, you know, it's going to be a revolution. And so these points that you're making in context are part of the foundations that need to be applied and built in our lives. And if we don't build those foundations and we don't have a true deep roots in our tree with these truths, the power and the pressure that's coming over the next 3 years will crush us. And this is why, you know, I mean, like, you know, with Sarah here, I've worked with small groups for over 10 years, anywhere from 8 to 10 people all the way up to 60 and 70 on a weekly basis for over 10 years. So, you know, so there is something to say for working not only with internet and doing what we're doing, but also forming small groups within your community, Gemini energy and context, and then, you know, opening up your home, whatever, and then start teaching even from the aspect on a local level. This is another way where we can, you know, basically kind of penetrate the dark satanic aspects that are running people's systems. And so it is another aspect to the plethora of things that we can do, you know, with doing this great work, and then, you know, not only doing it with ourselves, but then taking it to the collective consciousness, a very Aquarian energy context to working with groups, that type of thing. And then having that, you know, that true, making true connection with people, you know, hand in hand, arm in arm, eye to eye, you know, in the same space, you know, connecting your auric fields. And so running with what your points are here, you know, they're this universal cosmic principle, and it runs throughout everything. And as long as you can continue to apply that and bring that into your waking consciousness, illuminating your subconscious and unconscious minds, and making that darkness conscious, you know, Carl Jung stuff, right? We're bringing ourselves into a space then where we're actually taking responsibility, and we are actually connecting to that morality, and that becomes our North Star, our compass. Truth becomes the compass that navigates our lives.
Exactly. Again, with that subjective and objective aspect,
Yes.
It's like everyone's purpose is different and unique.
Yes.
But part of it objectively is finding out what your purpose is. And objectively, your purpose is to learn the cosmic principles and live in alignment with those in your life, and to evolve your consciousness. That is your
right.
your universal purpose. But how you do that is completely unique to you, and only you can discover what that is.
Look, human race is in the shit. And what has to happen here is and really honestly, we're in a bunch of bullshit, man. I mean, it's bad. But I did a video yesterday and I said to people, I said, it's not necessarily your fault. Okay. I mean, you were born into a bloodline that's corrupt. You were born into this bullshit, right? You got all kinds of baggage, all kinds of blood trauma, all this shit, right? We get thrown into, man. All the epigenetics that's going on and the manipulation of the elements. There's just like a massive amount of shit, right?
Yeah.
But it is your responsibility and it is your fault to stay that way.
Mhm.
See? I get it, man. We get thrown into like Jim Morrison says, like a dog without a bone, an actor out on loan. You're into this world we're thrown, and into this world we're born, into this world we're thrown, like a dog without a bone, an actor out on loan. We're riders on the storm, and this is exactly what's going on. We have this chaos and entropy and stagnation that's devouring the human race. And look, we have to take authority over that context to our own soul and system mechanics, bring that online, become the beacon, the lighthouse of intuition, the lighthouse of truth in context to our witness of our lives. And then that's where we're shining. We're actually the city on the hill. We are the lighthouse. And then that's when we can translate that to the collective, like Sarah doing the small groups, or doing the podcast, doing the, putting out the information, bringing things into the ethers in context. And this is how we have to do it. And it's, like I used to teach, it's one individual at a time sometimes that you even are working with. So everybody should be working with something or someone, and first with themselves, and then they have an obligation of morality to help their fellow man, as far as I'm concerned.
Yep, well said. Any closing thoughts? And then I think we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, no, it's been great. It's been a good run. Are we planning on doing something next week?
Yeah, I think I've got 2 or 3 more weeks that we can do the show until, like I said, I went ahead and asked for an extension for my ship out date just because I had so much I've got to do. I'm trying to finish my presentation. It's a huge project and it ended up being a lot bigger than I thought initially.
Yeah, sure.
You just keep unveiling like new layers and it's like, oh, I have to have this in there,
Yeah.
I think it's up to 19,000 words now written out. So I got to make slides with all of that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you got to make a presentation what you're making there. Yeah, it makes sense, man. No, it's good though. Glad you guys are doing that. It looks like it's going to be a great conference.
It's going to be amazing. Definitely, again, encourage everyone, go to freedomundernaturallaw.com, sign up and register. That's in about 2 weeks from now. It's going to be killer, man. Lots of great information, amazing presenters. So cool. I think that's going to wrap us up for the day. Yeah, great conversation. Thank you, Rodney. I appreciate your insights as always.
Absolutely.
So that's, bring it to a close right there. Appreciate everyone also for your engagement, for joining in, leaving your comments. Again, please hit the like, show your support for truth in a very easy and simple way, and share this video with somebody, somebody who might need to hear this message. So, that's all we have for today. Do check out thewizardfactory.com. Follow us on social media, all that good stuff. Much love to you all. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. And we'll see you right here next week for another show, Saturday, noon Central. But until then, be empowered, inspired, and encouraged. Take care.